Can you hear me now? Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello, everyone. If you're joining now, I'm just adding a quick little poll to the chat where it's going to be asking a poll question about the topic of the video today about will Republicans be locked out of the general election in California. So I want to put that in here. I'm going to have yes, no. I can put it unsure. No, I think we'll leave just yes or no for that. Okay. Okay, so we'll give it a few minutes for people to come in because I know it's 5 p.m. Eastern, so it's not my typical streaming time. So I know this is unexpected, so I want to give time for people to come in and watch. It's been a few minutes. Everything looks pretty good setup wise. Just making sure it's live on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it is. Obviously, if you're in here, we'll know. But I think yeah. Okay, I think it's pretty good. Good. Okay, so I think we're looking good. I think everything is up and loading. So, okay, welcome to today's video. So, Tuesday, obviously, we did the election night coverage of the California races, particularly for the governor and Los Angeles mayor's race. There are a lot of other congressional races going on in the state of California, too, and I'll briefly probably address those in this video as well. But it's about 5 p.m. Eastern time, which is, I think, about 2 p.m. California time. And I just want to do a brief little update on what is going on in the state of California, where things currently stand, and what some political analysts are saying on this race. So since election night, we've had a little bit of movement in this race. Steve Hilton, the Republican candidate, is still currently in first place by percentage, but the second place candidate, the Democrat Javier Becerra, has officially been declared one of the two winners in the governor's race in the state of California. Now, it is definitely not, I would say, typical for the second place candidate to be 100% going to a runoff before the candidate that's currently in first place. Typically, not something I don't remember seeing too often, but the reason that this is roughly about 60% of the vote in. Overall, you're looking at roughly 5.6 million votes cast in California. And based on the current estimates and projections, you're looking at like another around 4 million votes or so to still come in. So the numbers are even higher than we thought they were on election night. And the numbers that have come in thus far, and some of the red counties, they've been good for Steve Hilton, but in a lot of the counties, they've been doing very well for Javier Becerra and Tom Steyer, which is really not too surprising when you look at the early voting statistics. When you look at early voting, just in-person voting overall, the Democrats did have a slight lead over the Republicans, but for ballots voted by mail, there was a much larger gap. Democrats had roughly about 2.5 million, Republicans had about 1.4 million. So there's a very big voter gap there, and most of the votes that's left, that 60%, are almost all entirely vote by mail, which means as they come in, it's going to likely give the Democrats a very large boost here. Now, the website I've been using to cover and keep up to date on these results is actually Vote Hub, as they've been doing updates relatively pretty frequently whenever vote comes in. For instance, on 4:12 p.m. Eastern today, there was a dump out of Colusa County, and it ended up showing that Steve Hilton gained about 1.5%. Chad Bianco gained about 3.6 or lost 3.6%. So this is more of a Republican county, but still Hilton gained 1.5, Bianco lost 3.6. In this same vote dump though, Javier Becerra gained about 2.8%, Tom Steyer gained about 2.2%. So in an area that's more Republican friendly, that Steve Hilton would probably be doing better in, still Becerra and Steyer gained some votes there. Now, the main areas to watch for, of course, are you looking at the big population centers in California? You're looking, we can even search by votes here as well. You're looking at Los Angeles, you're looking at Orange County, San Diego. These are some key areas to watch because we've seen some movement in these places. Orange County, Steve Hilton is leading by a considerable amount still at 37.09%. Javier Becerra is at 22.35%. Tom Steyer's at 16.12. But since election night, things have moved. I do believe Steyer's up, I think, around a point in Orange County since election day. And there's still 30% of the vote to go in this more, I would say, Republican friendly area, given the vote splitting of the other Democratic and Republican candidates in the race. Orange County is going to be benefiting Steve Hilton more than, say, some of these other counties that are going to be going more Democratic. That's Orange County. And San Diego, things have narrowed up a little bit as well, where Hilton's now at 31.98%, Becerra's at 25.72%, and Steyer's at 19.05%. In Los Angeles, Becerra's at 29.62%, Steyer's at 23.11%, Hilton's at 22.47%. So this is one where now Steyer is leading over Hilton by about, what's that, about 9,000 votes. It's one where as the results come in, and there's still another 32% of vote to go there. As more votes have come in, Steyer and Becerra seem to be growing on their leads over Steve Hilton, and this is gradually over time. Not has made a massive difference when you look at the vote totals here, but it's been a little bit of a shift in the race. So much so that Javier Becerra is now declared one of the two winners for sure, and it seems to be down between Steve Hilton and Tom Steyer for second place in the general election. Ultimately, what will happen? Will there be enough votes that come in for Tom Steyer to get up to Steve Hilton? Remains to be seen because it's definitely getting closer as more votes come in. I believe Steyer, when we left on election night at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., Steyer was around 19.2%. So he's gone up about a full percentage point to 20.18%. He's still trailing Steve Hilton by roughly about 7 points, close to about 400,000 votes separating Hilton and Steyer. But again, the context is important. He's about 400,000 votes down, but there's still over 4 million votes left to go. And if vote by mail is heavily Democratic, then there could be enough votes out there for Becerra to grow in his lead, which is why they declare him the winner and ultimately take first place. But there could also be enough votes for Tom Steyer to potentially catch Steve Hilton in these regards as well. Now, even though the vote by mail heavily skews Democratic, though, it's not going to go like 99% for Steyer, 1% for Hilton. Hilton will still probably get a good amount of the vote. It just won't be as much as Becerra and Steyer. So what that ultimately means is it's currently forecasting to a very close race, one that's probably under like 5 percentage points, maybe even closer than that potentially. But it's definitely forecasting a very close race between Hilton and Steyer. So it's going to be important to keep an eye out for that. In terms of some other vote information we have here, they put it out at 1:47 p.m. Today will likely be the biggest day of counting of the trail. We expect about 35 to 40 of California's 58 counties today, including most of the state's largest population centers. They're projecting Tulare to come in at 6 p.m. and Alameda, their first drop, at 7 p.m. So that's going to be very big to watch for as well as those votes come in. And that's an important area. That's from Zachary Danini, the head of data science at VoteHub, put that out. They also have here from about midnight today, after night 3 of California's coverage, or governor coverage should be specific here, it says that Tom Steyer is doing much better in late mail than Steve Hilton is, his share of the votes relative to on election day rises about 5.7%, as Hilton falls about 5.1%, an overall net gain of 10.8% for Tom Steyer, though that is still below their estimated net target of 15.5%, but that number is likely to rise as more votes come in, especially if they come in out of these more Democratic friendly areas. So this is all shaping up to be a very close race in California and the governor's side between Hilton versus Steyer, where right now, really, it's anyone's guess at how this is currently going to go. I can show you how the markets are currently reacting to this on Polymarket. I believe this is the primary winners. Javier Braceras at 99%. Makes sense. Obviously, he's been declared the winner. But the odds for Hilton and Steyer have definitely shifted since election night. You can look even, let's see, June 2nd around midnight. Steve Hilton was at 75.9%. Tom Steyer's at about 33. Things have gone down and gone back up. Now Hilton is at 64%. Tom Steyer's at 37. So this, as it seems the days go on, this is getting closer and closer as Hilton and Steyer potentially are headed to a situation where there may be enough votes for Steyer to ultimately flip and jump ahead of Hilton as these votes come in. Still, though, there are a lot of votes left to go. Again, 40% of the vote in the state of California is estimated roughly around 4 million. So there's a lot of votes still left to go there. But we're going to have to wait and see how that all shakes out before, as we get those votes to come in, because that could definitely play a very huge role in the race. Uh, Ryan, how you doing? Hey, Anthony, didn't daytime live. It's understandable why. Yeah, honestly, did not plan on doing this, but I thought it was important to get one out, get the updated info on this race, because this is honestly, this race could change very, very quickly overnight, and I wanted to get a video out just kind of explaining, because it's been a few days now what's going on here, so I want to just get a update on that. So there's also been, I want to say, some more updates as well. Let's connect to the thing here. At 449, there's also a vote dump out of Sierra County where Chad Bianco gained, it's a very small amount, about 3 votes. Hilton gained 3, so they both went down some percentage points. Steyer and Becerra go up about 2 votes each. So again, very small amount of overall votes, but the percentages are definitely shifting in the direction of the Democrats and not the Republicans in the California governor's race. So we're starting to see these really kind of trend across a lot of the state of California, including in the video they did just an analysis on this around 4:30. They said that the weeks before Election Day, Vote Hub warned that Democratic voters were returning ballots later than Republicans, meaning Democratic votes would likely be counted later. That's exactly what's happening now. So the question will be, as time goes on, those 4 million votes or so, well, the question is going to be how Democratic are they? Because the Democrats still have to make up roughly about a 400,000 vote gap for Tom Steyer to get into the top 2 against Steve Hilton. Overall, the votes may be Democratic, but don't forget those Democratic votes are still probably getting split between Javier Becerra and Tom Steyer. One thing that we do know for certain, though, is the candidates outside of the top 3, in Becerra, Hilton, and Steyer, they don't really have any chance of getting into the top 2. Chad Bianco's in 4th place at 11.16, and at this current point in time, he is locked out of the top 2 and locked out by probably considerable amount. So I don't think there's really any scenario for Chad Bianco. He would have to jump 500,000 to get too close to Tom Steyer's numbers and about 900,000 to get to Hilton's numbers. So goes without saying he's done there. Katie Porter and Matt Mahan both have conceded their races. Porter's down at 4.5%. Mahan's down around 4%. Neither one of them have a path to getting into the top 2 as well. So even though in these vote dumps, Chad Bianco is getting, you'll see he gets a few votes here and there, and his numbers are starting to go down as well at now 11.16%. But even as these numbers come in, it's very clear it's a two-way race in California. And the name of the game, I think, at this point is just stressing patience and see as these votes come in. Because again, 40% of the vote to go in California is a massive, massive amount. And for what I've seen thus far, Vote Hub has been doing a pretty good job at updating these numbers as they come in. In terms of other things as well, I'm trying to see, they have the precinct map for Riverside County, which is the area, or an area that Chad Bianco, I do believe, is winning, 27.16. Becerra is now in second at 25.05. Hilton third at 21.15. This is an area that is Republican that Bianco is doing well in, but as more results come in, we could see both Becerra and Tom Steyer's numbers continue to rise in this more Republican area. Let's see here. We did the update, or yeah, we already did this update of the 10.8% on June 5th around midnight. The governor update from 4:06 p.m. said Merced County was kind enough to offer me a partisan registration data for approximately 12,500 unreleased, mostly unreleased votes. Overall, the partisan leans align more with what Steve Hilton would want to see. There's only a slight blue shift from the earlier vote. So, again, this means it's very much up in the air right now where things currently stand because there is the potential that Tom Steyer will get enough votes to get into the top two. There's also the potential Steyer gets more votes, but Hilton also gets enough votes to essentially keep moving the line and keep Steyer out of officially jumping into the top two. So it's important to see as more votes come in, ultimately just how things do go, because there's certainly still a lot of room to go in the governor's race across the state of California. But obviously, where most of the votes are, you look at total registration and just by sheer numbers, there's still or 1.4 million cast in Los Angeles. Let's see if they don't have estimated vote anymore, but in Los Angeles, you still have about 5.9 million registered voters, and there's 1.4 million voters currently cast in Los Angeles. So still a good amount of votes to go there. 32% of the vote out of the state's largest city by population. Orange County, as I showed earlier, 30% to go there. Still a lot of people. 2 million registered voters. Or that's San Diego, 1.9 million in Orange County. San Diego, another that's 2 million registered voters out of San Diego. Still 32% to go there. So, in three of the state's largest areas, there's still a lot of vote to come in there. It's going to be very important to see how it all goes because that will very well could potentially change the race depending how these places come in. If they're strong for Hilton, it could maybe put a Tom Steyer surge essentially to bed. If we see the trends continue of Becerra and Steyer doing strongly, it may make the race a lot more close between Hilton and Steyer, and maybe Steyer's a chance of getting in the top two there. Riverside County and San Bernardino counties are two areas that are very key as well. Only 55% in out of Riverside, 72% out of San Bernardino, but they're very close. Obviously, I showed you Riverside where Bianco's up by about 2.1% over Javier Becerra. Hilton's in third place. If these numbers continue to shrink, as Becerra and Tom Steyer both do better in Riverside, that could be an area of improvement for Steyer to gain on Hilton as well. In San Bernardino, starting to see something maybe a little bit similar as well. Hilton's at 25.6, Becerra's at 24.15, Bianca's at 21.92. Then you have these areas in the state that are more heavily, or not heavily, but more Democratic, where Becerra and Steyer are doing better. Santa Clara is currently going for Becerra, 30.27. Hilton's at 23, Steyer's at 22.26. Still 44% of the vote to go in Santa Clara County. So that's an area that I expect will definitely probably some more votes come in there. Still about half the vote left to go. Those are areas I'm expecting to benefit Becerra and Steyer more than Hilton would in that area. Alameda County, over half the vote to go there. Another 56% of the votes still to go out of Alameda County. Becerra is currently leading by 2.2% at 29.7. Steyer's in second at 27.47. So still definitely a long way to go there. But this is another area we could see Becerra and Steyer improving their numbers, which again, will probably put Becerra into first place when everything is said and done. And then Hilton versus Steyer will become a very close race. Capital of Sacramento, 40% of the vote in there, so still another 60% to go. This is the area that Javier Becerra is from, so he'll probably end up winning here and doing so by a good amount. Though Hilton has a lead right now of about 0.2%, and Steyer's down at 16.71%. Definitely expecting to see some growth for Becerra and Steyer in this area. Contra Costa is very important as well, 43% of the vote in here. Becerra's in first place, Hilton's in second, Steyer's in third, but again, the numbers percentage-wise are starting to get smaller as more votes come in. And San Francisco. Got to talk about San Francisco, as this is one of the only areas in the map that Tom Steyer is actually winning here. And Tom Steyer is currently winning 34.4, Becerra's at 24.7, and Matt Mahan, the Democrats, down at around 12%. Again, with over half the vote to go here, we're looking at more votes to come in that'll probably benefit Steyer and Becerra. It's smaller in population compared to the counties we talked about beforehand or above that, but an important area to keep an eye on as well. So in terms of where things overall stand, just like a broad summary of it, it's going to get close without a doubt. I definitely think, like the election night prediction that I did, I definitely think Javier Becerra is going to finish in first place once all the votes are in. There's 4 million votes left outstanding. We know that most of them are probably going to benefit the Democrats more than the Republicans. And there's only a lead for Becerra. We talked about Hilton leading over Steyer about 400,000 votes. There's only a lead of, it looks like, under 100,000 votes now for Hilton over Becerra. You're looking at, what's that, about 60,000 or 70,000 vote lead for Hilton over Becerra. That's definitely going to be made up in the next like few days to a week or so as the votes come in, because there's just enough math out there for Becerra to jump Hilton, and that likely will happen. The main race at this point is between Hilton and Steyer. That's why Decision Desk called Becerra to advance to the general, because Hilton versus Steyer looks like is going to be a very close race. Does this mean Steve Hilton can't win? No, I wouldn't say that, because I do think the math is still out there for Hilton to potentially win. But as more of these votes come in and you see the lead getting closer and closer, there's a reason why Steve Hilton's starting to go down on the market odds on Polymarket, and I do believe on Kalshi as well. And Tom Steyer's numbers are starting to go up just a little bit because there's uncertainty here. There's uncertainty until all the votes are in. Is there enough of a lead for Steve Hilton to survive? Because there's about a 400,000 vote lead, which is a very large amount, but in a race with another 4 million votes to go, it is possible that lead is made up. So it's very important to see these vote dumps as they come in out of the California governor's race, because there is definitely enough vote for Hilton to win, but there's enough vote for Steyer to make up as well. So very interesting to see how it goes as it comes in. Oh, I missed a lot of chats. Oh, let's see here. Brian said Steyer has reached 1 million in votes. Yep, he's at 1.1 million. Genesis says, how much of the vote should we expect tonight? Will we see a big vote drop? So in terms of how much overall, I think we've gotten about, I want to say about 4% of the vote over the last like 4 days or so. So I think somewhere in between another like 1 to like 4% is probably what we're going to see. Vote Hub, in terms of overall numbers here, they're reporting Tulare and Alameda will come out tonight, which I think are decently sized counties. Alameda right here is, yeah, about 966,000 registered voters. That'll have a pretty significant gap as a vote comes out of there. Tulare County is more of a strong Republican one based on these votes, with Hilton up by about 18 points here. Bianco's in second at 20.73. So their combined vote alone is around 59%. But again, as more of these votes come in, it's possible we may see the Democratic candidates do incrementally a little bit better in these areas. Still 72% in, about 28% to go there. Not as much vote out of Tulare as out of, say, Alameda County, that's at 44%. So yeah, in terms of overall vote, I think we're probably looking at somewhere between 1 to 4% of the overall statewide vote will drop tonight. I don't think we're going to get close to like 100% or anything tonight. Greenville says interesting is still going on. It certainly is. Definitely not the most common thing happening in U.S. elections where it drags on for a while like this. I know Arizona has this happen every election cycle, but it almost seems like Arizona and California are kind of unique in this. I know it's a primary, but dang, that's a lot of red. Yeah, it is. And as Brian said, it's a lot of red, but I've talked about this on election night too. I know Brian understands this because I know I've said this a few times, but right now, with Steve Hilton leading across the state, it's a race where there are a ton of candidates. There are 61 total candidates across the state. And in terms of the major candidates coming into election night, there were really two major candidates in Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. Hilton's getting about 27.18%. Bianco's getting about 11.16%. Combined, you're looking around like 38.4% of the vote or so combined among Hilton and Bianco. Now, there are other Republican and Democratic candidates down ballot that are getting less than like 0.31% from Tim Nelson as the third Republican candidate. If you were to add up all the other Republican vote, you'll probably get up to like 41, 42%, something like that. But the Democrats definitely outnumber the Republicans in this race. The way that I kind of been comparing it to two elections in California, I've been definitely comparing it a lot to the presidential race from 2024, where Kamala Harris got about 58.4%, Donald Trump got about 38.33%, but there was also other candidates on the ballot as well. So one race where it was just Democrat and Republican was the governor's race in 2022, where Gavin Newsom won 59.18%. The Republican Brian Dahle got 40.82%. And then in 2018, Newsom got about 62%. The Republican Cox got about 38%. So I think somewhere in between that 2018 governor number and that 2022 governor number is overall the combined vote is currently how it's looking in the governor's race right now. So when you look across the map here and you see a lot of red in areas you probably wouldn't really expect, like even it's competitive, but red San Diego, red Orange County, even red San Luis Rapizo, San Bernardino being red. You can see Fresno being very red. In these areas, even Sacramento currently being red. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the vote is essentially being split among these 61 candidates. And again, Republicans only are really splitting the vote among two, between Hilton and Bianco, whereas the Democrats, Becerra and Steyer, are certainly the main two Democrats, but still about 8 to 9% of the state did want to support Katie Porter and Matt Mahan. So that's going to take some votes away from Becerra and Steyer as well. And again, there's now a new important wrinkle in this as well, which is that only 60% of the vote in, 40% still to go, and a lot of the vote is vote by mail, going to be more Democratic friendly. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a lot of these areas that look super red now end up flipping and becoming more Democratic and even close to being tied as more of these results come in. So definitely, Brian, there's a lot of red in the state, but again, a lot of that has to do with vote splitting, and a lot of late Democratic votes have not come in yet. And once those do, they'll probably see a lot more flips. But again, it's California. Go to a general election, whether it's one Republican and one Democrat, the Democrat will probably win by around 20 points. If it's Becerra versus Tom Steyer, you have two Democrats running, then things get a lot more interesting, as there's a lot more of a competitive race underway there in terms of the margin of victory than what a Democrat versus Republican would ultimately end up being. Uh, let's see. Okay, so yeah, just covered the primary one, a lot of red. As Greenville says, most of the vote hasn't come in yet, so it's more likely from blue cities. Yep, definitely agree with that. Brian says, I wonder how San Diego County will be when the rest of the vote from San Diego comes in, whether the county will end up blue or red. Yeah, San Diego's going to be an interesting one to watch. And again, it's like either second or third in overall votes that are left to come in, given that it's about 68% of the vote in here. And you look at the percentages now, Hilton has a lead over Becerra of roughly about 6 points. And overall vote here, he has a lead, Hilton over Becerra, of under about 40,000 votes. You're looking at like a 37,000 vote lead or so. Or maybe a little bit more than that, maybe like, or a little less than that, maybe like 35,000 vote lead. And is that enough for Becerra to come back? I would say so, because that 32% of the about 568,000, if you were to double it, it'd be up to 1,000,000. So you're looking at maybe another 300,000 votes or so, 350,000 votes to go to San Diego. Becerra would have to do very well to flip San Diego County from Steve Hilton, but I think it could end up being a very, very close county as more of these votes come in. I don't know for sure that it will flip, but there is definitely the possibility that it could as more of those votes come in. Uh, let's see here. Aiden says, just got here. Will Steyer make the race? So it's right now, honestly, I think it's essentially a 50-50 between Will Hilton or Steyer advance. So it's not a very great answer for you, but I think Steyer has a better chance today than he did on election night of making the general election. Hilton still has a lead of about 400,000 votes, though again, with roughly about 4 million votes to go, there is enough votes out there if Steyer can keep growing his numbers exponentially to potentially pass Hilton in advance. I can't say definitively 100% one way or the other right now between Hilton and Steyer, because I know what's going to happen as more votes come in. The number's going to get closer. Hilton, he may stay around 27%. He may go down to like 26 or 26 and a half. But Tom Steyer's numbers are going to go up as well. The question is, it's really a race between Hilton's numbers going down or Tom Steyer's numbers going up. Does Steyer have enough votes to ultimately pass Hilton? And right now, I think it's possible. I think Hilton has a very slight lead right now over Steyer, given that he already has the 400,000 vote gap. But there's definitely enough votes out there for Steyer to jump Hilton. So it's going to be interesting to see as more votes come in here, if there is enough votes ultimately for Steyer to pass Hilton. Also, I just want to point out, I did put a poll in the chat as well about, do you think Republicans will be locked out of the general election for both governor and mayor? I've not talked about the mayor's race yet, but I will be talking about that one in just a moment, as the mayor's race is actually looking a little bit more concrete on second place than the governor's race is, which I don't know if that's a surprise or not, but that is looking to be the case. I'll be talking about that in just one moment. Greenville says usually the most rural or Republican areas count faster, I think, which gave their illusion of lots of red, but at the same time, also, even if most of the counties are red. Yeah, and I think definitely, and I've tried to convey that as well And in the election night video I did, I tried to convey that as well, where I thought a lot of the Republican counties would report their votes first as the election day vote and the early in-person vote came in, and they got reported first, and they're going to be more leaning Republican. We see in pretty much all these elections across the country, you vote in person, you vote early. Typically, it benefits Republicans. You vote by mail, you vote by mail early, or vote by mail late. Typically, that benefits the Democrats. So, a lot of Republican votes early on. That's probably why Hilton has a 400,000 vote lead. And that's the question: as more of the late mail votes come in, does Tom Steyer have enough to ultimately jump Steve Hilton? I'm very confident, like 100% sure, Javier Becerra, once all the votes are in, will be jumping Steve Hilton for first place. I have no doubt about that. The question will be, does Tom Steyer have enough votes to jump Steve Hilton? That's going to be a lot closer, as he has to make up about 400,000 votes across that. Still a big number, but with 4 million left to go, definitely possible. Keanu says, my final prediction is Becerra will end up being in first or in the lead, and Hilton and Steyer will be really close. I don't know which will be second or third, but I'll be close. And yeah, I think that's definitely spot on. I think we're definitely going to see Becerra jump to first, and then Hilton versus Steyer. I mean, no matter who wins, I think we're going to see a difference of like probably under like a 30,000 vote difference probably between Hilton and Steyer, which again, 30,000 votes may seem, well, that may sound like a lot, but again, look at the difference between Hilton and Becerra right now is like 60 to 70,000. It's only a difference of about 1 point across the entire state. So I think we're looking at under a 1 point margin between Hilton and Steyer as all the votes are counted based if they continue the way that they have thus far. I think it's certainly going to be very close as those come in. Greenville says, as long as the Democrats will win big in the most populated counties, they'll still get a lot of the vote. Yep, definitely. Brian says, my prediction is that it'll be Becerra versus Hilton. And I think that does seem still to be Becerra versus Hilton is the most likely outcome right now. Because again, Steyer still has to make up 400,000 votes, but it is getting closer as more votes have come in. But Hilton, I do still think, is very slightly favored right now. That's why you see in the odds as well, Hilton is still the slight favorite, because even though things are getting better for Steyer, Hilton does still have that 400,000 vote advantage right now. Let's see here. Okay, and then we have Greenville saying, I feel like Becerra beats Hilton by 15 to 20 points in the general election. It is California. And yeah, I agree with that too. I know a lot of Republicans will see Hilton in first place and try and frame it as Republicans like surging in California, and they're going to make their race competitive in the general. The simple fact is, though, again, when you look across all the candidates, Democrats are being the Republicans in this race, probably 60-40 just in the primary. No primary vote. Sometimes it's talked about doesn't mean something, does not mean something, but California has routinely voted roughly about 20 points in the general election for president, for governor, for Senate over the last like 4 election cycles, and I don't think it's going to be any different here, especially in a midterm election where President Trump's approval rating is down like nearly 20 points. I think we're going to see California elect, if it's Democrat versus Republican, I think we're going to see him elect a Democrat by probably 15 to 20 point, like you said, in that margin. And then Brian just echoes that, yep, because California being a safe blue, solid blue state, I definitely agree there. Maybe at most it could be 15 points, but probably not under that. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think it's going to fall under 15 points just because, yes, Newsom is the incumbent, and whenever the incumbent is not up for re-election, it does seem to be a more competitive race, but it's just still an overwhelmingly Democratic state of that California is. And to get a 5 point shift in the race here, it would have to be very significant. As in California in 2024, again, Donald Trump did better across the entire country, really everywhere, including in California, where Trump won the state by more than 9 points, a 9 point shift from 2020. And even still, at the end of the day, California still voted for Kamala Harris by about 20 points. So I think we're still going to see California be a pretty safe Democratic seat in the general election. Let's see here. Okay, then Greenfield says, like in PA, Josh Bureau only got elected by a margin of 15 or 16 points. Yeah, it's governor's races are definitely interesting, but I think California is just more of a solid Democratic state. I don't think it's going to. I definitely don't think California is going to vote to the or to the right of Pennsylvania in this general election cycle. Even though I do think Shapiro is going to win by around 15 points, I don't think California is going to fall below that. But Greenfield says even in Illinois, Pritzker didn't do great in the most recent election, and that's a very blue state too. Like what I mean is he still did well, but I don't think he'll win by 15 points or more. Well, it depends though, also because it's true that Pritzker didn't do as well, and I think it was 2022. He is facing the same candidate this time around, but again, also a lot of it is what have you done for me lately? How's the country doing? And again, in a midterm election now during President Trump's term, instead of a midterm election during President Biden's term, I think we're going to see the Democrats do better in a lot of these safe Democratic states. Okay. Um, let's see. Also predicting other blue states like Maryland, Massachusetts, the incumbent governors there will win re-election by large margins. Same with New York and Colorado. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Okay, and then Keanu says if Hilton gets third place, will he accuse the Democrats of committing voter fraud or accept the results? I would definitely imagine voter fraud. Would be my guess at this point, especially as he's leading on election night by about 400,000 votes. And then if Steyer has enough to like catch him and beat him by like 15,000 or 20,000 vote, I would bet almost everything that voter fraud would definitely come up in conversation. I would imagine President Trump would certainly weigh in as well. And whether it's statements or lawsuits or whatever, I would imagine there would be a pretty united Republican effort to go after it and say it's voter fraud in that. Obviously, how it would all work out, I would still probably imagine Tom Steyer would end up being the candidate anyway, but I do definitely think that is a possibility for sure. I know Hilton was talking about something yesterday about that. I think about like speeding the results and having the results come in faster in California. And then him and Gavin Newsom were going back and forth online about that and about Newsom, I think, saying that Hilton doesn't know how the governor election laws work or the election system works in California. So they're going back and forth with that. So there's already been a lot of that starting in California. So I think it definitely shows a sign of some unease from Hilton and the Republicans as Steyer and Becerra both are gaining on their numbers. That there's a real possibility Hilton falls out of the top two. And there's definitely some unease going on in California for the Republicans, without a doubt, going on there. So that's the governor's race right now. Now I want to talk about the Los Angeles mayor's race because we do have some important developments here as well. In Los Angeles mayor's race, there's a similar situation happening here. We know on election night, Karen Bass has been officially declared one of the two candidates to advance to the runoff. With the amount of vote left to go, which based on Los Angeles, the city itself, there's still about 31% of the vote to go out of Los Angeles. And in terms of where things stand, Bass currently has 35%, though it's expected to grow even more as more of these votes come in. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of water as well. Okay, so similar to the state of California and the governor's race, a lot of the votes that are left out there are going to be vote by mail, and they're going to be skewing more Democratic. This is why Karen Bass is already leading in the race by about 6 points. She currently has a lead in the mayor's race of about 32,000 votes. Her numbers are likely only going to go up as more vote comes in. I'm not sure it'll go up an astronomical amount, but it'll probably go up at least a little bit. Now, the question is going to be second place, as Spencer Pratt and Athea Rahman are now battling it out for second. And similar to the governor's race, there are other candidates down ballot, but Adam Miller at 3.8% is nowhere near Rahman's 23.42%. There's not really a chance of any of these other candidates catching the top three. But Pratt versus Rahman is a very interesting race and becoming a very interesting race as well. Rahman is currently at 130,473 votes at 23.42%. Now, sort of unlike the governor's race, we've actually seen a pretty rapid growth for Rahman in this race, up to 23.42. I believe she was around high 20s, even maybe low 21% on election night. So she's grown roughly about 2 points in the last few days. Pratt is now at 29.35%, only a gap here of roughly about 33,000 votes in the state. Now, again, 557,000 votes have been cast in this race, 69%. So you still have another 31% of the vote to go, which, again, if you were to double it, you're looking at really over above 1 million votes. You kind of cut that margin in half here. You're looking at somewhere in between 250 to 300,000 more votes to come out of the city of Los Angeles. Is that enough for Rahman to potentially jump Pratt? Well, he's only leading by 33,000 out of roughly 250 to 300,000. I would definitely say there's enough vote for Rahman to catch Pratt. And again, I mentioned the market odds for the governor's race. Well, on the prediction odds here, they're even more bullish. We can look at June 2nd here at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Karen Bass, 65.5% chance to win the mayor's race. Spencer Pratt at 23.5. Nithya Raman at 11. Now, this is with Karen Bass still finishing in first place in the election as the results came in here. Bass's numbers went up here. But Pratt at 23.5 looked to be the almost foregone conclusion lock to advance to the general election. As more of the results come in and Raman's numbers have gone up, Pratt's numbers have tanked and Raman's have skyrocketed. Spencer Pratt now only has a 5% chance to win the LA mayor's race. Nithya Raman has 31%. This can mean two things. It can mean the market is very down on the possibility, if Pratt does advance to the general, that Karen Bass would lose to Spencer Pratt, which certainly could be the case as well. But it seems to be more on the side of, Nithya Raman passing Spencer Pratt and advancing to a general election versus Karen Bass. That's according to Polymarket. Kalshi's not too dissimilar now. 61% for Karen Bass, 31% Nithya Raman, 8% for Spencer Pratt. We can even look in the last week or so for a more dramatic look at this. Again, here we're looking, say, June 2nd throughout Election Day. Pratt's usually around mid-20s, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The results start coming in out of California. Pratt's numbers go around 15 to 18%. And now today, Raman's back up at 32. Pratt is down at 8%. So you may be wondering and looking at this, you're like, okay, well, why is this the case? Isn't Spencer Pratt in second place right now? But unlike with the governor's race, Raman only has to make up 35,000 votes versus Spencer Pratt in this race, whereas across the entire state of California, Steyer has to make up 400,000. And even still, there's some pretty bullish odds and estimates in the governor's race of Steyer making those numbers up. But in Los Angeles, in the few vote dumps that we have gotten, I don't know if VoteHub has it displayed on this screen. I know I've seen it on Twitter a bunch. They do have breaking down Los Angeles' early vote. We could see here, this is from June 1st. I don't think this has the latest numbers from the vote dump. So from what I've seen on Twitter that has come in thus far, is that the votes that have come in have almost all been Karen Bass in first place, Nithya Raman in second place, and Spencer Pratt in a distant third place. So what that means is sort of similar to the governor's race. As more of this vote comes in, Karen Bass's lead will probably slowly grow incrementally. She may go up like another point to 2 points when all the votes are in. I'm not sure how much her numbers are going to grow too much, but as Nithya Raman and Spencer Pratt, as more votes come in here, the consistent trend of the late vote male has been Raman's votes have been gaining and Pratt's have been gaining at a smaller rate. So we're seeing Raman's percentage go up about 2 points to 23.42. Pratt's is down at 29.35. And this isn't really, I wouldn't say too surprising, because things were very close in this race heading into this, and there was a lot of undecided vote. And overall, the final days of the polling, Spencer Pratt had 18.4%, Nithya Raman had 15.9%. Among the time that I started recording my election night video, things are very tight though. Pratt had 19.2, Raman had 18.3. Pratt was in the lead. The last time that Pratt wasn't leading Raman overall in the average here, you'd have to go back to about March 28th of 2026, where Raman had 14.2, Pratt had 12.6. It was very clear Spencer Pratt was having a late surge in this race, along a lot of media attention given to him and his campaign. A lot of Republicans in Los Angeles, there aren't a ton, but the Republicans that are almost all consolidated behind Pratt. A lot of independent voters were voting for Pratt as well as the alternative to Karen Bass. But Nithya Raman being that candidate that would be described as a challenge to Karen Bass from the farther left of Bass to be a more progressive candidate, especially in areas like affordability and homelessness and housing, that's something that definitely resonated with a lot of voters, where Raman's only down Spencer Pratt now by about 33,000 votes. And in Los Angeles, an area that's heavily Democratic in the state, again, in the governor's race here, Becerra is at about 29.62%, Steyer's at 23.1%. The leading Republican candidate in that race, Steve Hilton, is at 22.47% across the entire county. Now, just in the city of Los Angeles alone, Spencer Pratt is running at 29.35%. So Pratt is running very strong in this race. He may have enough votes to hold on, but it seems as more vote has come in, I would say the chances that Nithya Raman jumps Spencer Pratt and becomes a 1-2 race of Bass versus Raman definitely seems a lot more likely, I would say, than Steyer jumping Steve Hilton. It's possible both of these scenarios do end up happening, but Rahman, I would say, has the momentum in this race right now. At this current point in time, Spencer Pratt is just hoping the vote dumps that come in of the remaining 31% are friendly enough where he can eke out a victory of under 1 point, because as these votes come in more and more, it looks like Nithya Rahman is getting closer and closer to jumping over Spencer Pratt. Let's see. Let's see. I think I missed a few chats here, not as many, but we're talking about the Pritzker comment didn't win by 15 in 2022. I've been 20 something a little better than like you said. Yeah, no, yeah, definitely understood that. Keanu said if Pratt fails or falls to third, will he accuse the Democrats of voter fraud? I don't know much about him, or if he is a Trump-style MAGA Republican. I heard on PodSave that Trump hasn't really formally endorsed him. Spencer Pratt, I think, is more of a unique case because he is, I do believe, a registered Republican, but his campaign has very much been about trying to win over a lot of everyday people in Los Angeles. It's not so much been a partisan get the Republican only Republican votes. Only he's been trying to win over Democrats, Independents, Republicans, really everyone as a as he would say like a hopeful alternative to Karen Bass and Karen Bass's failed leadership. So Spencer Pratt, if he gets locked out of the top two, I think it's more unpredictable what happens there. He may just say he accepts the results and moves on, and he may say that Los Angeles is looking for that alternative to Karen Bass. I don't think he would endorse Nithya Rahman because he definitely in the debate went after both her and Bass pretty hard. But even despite him saying that, I do believe he said that Karen Bass he blames for burning down his home. I think he'd probably just stay neutral in the race after that. I don't think he would endorse either one of them. I don't know how the results if they come in for Ramen and she jumps Pratt. I don't know what Pratt would do in that scenario for per se, but we still have to keep an eye on for sure if that ultimately does happen. But this is another one that's going to be very important to watch. I don't believe Vote Hub has any current information about when the next vote dump out of Los Angeles will come in. Just that when we started the stream, we got the information about Amadora County at 5:03 p.m. Eastern Time, so right around the time that I went live here, and that Hilton got 178 votes, Bianco 89, Steyer 66, and Becerra 53. So in this scenario, Becerra goes down, but Steyer goes up about 2.4%. Yeah, but in terms of Los Angeles, no current information on when the next vote dump will come out of there for the mayor's race. But the mayor's race, I think, is a definitely likelier flip target as the vote numbers, the overall number to flip is smaller, only about 33,000 for Rahman to catch Pratt, and the percentage lead as well, about 6 points, is slightly smaller, but kind of a similar situation underway in the mayor's race and the governor's race. But Pratt, I think, is more in danger of falling out of the top two than the governor's race, where Hilton, I think, is more likely at this current point in time to defeat Steyer and stay in the top two. But again, I don't think that's going to be a 100% certainty either as of right now. So there's enough vote. A lot of this has to do with the vote that's left out there, because if the vote is more Democratic friendly, there's enough vote for both Steyer to jump Hilton and for Rahman to jump Pratt as well. In terms of the other races down ballot, there are a ton still going on. A lot of the top candidates that finished in first place have already been decided, but a lot of the second place candidates haven't been decided yet. In the first district, Gallagher and McGuire have been settled. The second district, Huffman's in first. Second place, still too early to say. The third district, Tucker and Barra are advancing, so that's settled. The fourth district, the Democrat Mike Thompson is in first place, but no call yet on second place. Fifth district, McClintock and Mazzuda are going to the general. The sixth district, this one's going to be very close. This one's been talked about a lot. This is Kevin Kiley's district. This is the former Republican congressman, now turned independent, who he's in first place at 26.83%, only lead of about 5,000 votes here. The Republican candidates in second, but 23,000 votes. The Democrats in third at 22,000. So what happens in the next vote dumps are going to be very important in this race as well. There's the possibility both the independent, former Republican, and Republican can block out the only Democratic candidate in a district that's now supposed to be more Democratic friendly. Will it ultimately happen? We're going to have to wait and see as the votes come in. I think it's more unlikely that they both Republicans lock out the Democrat, but again, we'll wait and see as more votes come in there. So that's a very important one. In the 7th district, Doris Matsui, Zachariah Wooden, and May Vang are in a very close race in the Sacramento-based district to head to the general in that one. So we can go through every single race. It would definitely take a while, but there's still a lot to go in California in a lot of these races where either the first candidate is settled but the rest aren't, or there's still a lot of undecided votes there that could really shape the race one way or the other for first and second place as well. For lieutenant governor, it's definitely getting talked about less than the governor's race, but this one's definitely too close to call as well here. Gloria Romero is currently the leading candidate. She is a Republican at 19.58%. Fiona Ma, M.A., is in second place at 19.18%, so a very close race there. Democrat Josh Friday is in third place at 13.91. He is trailing the other Democrat candidate by about a little bit under 300,000 votes, though again, as more vote comes in, like what we're seeing in the Tom Steyer race, down about 6% across the entire state, there is enough votes out there if he does well enough to potentially jump into the top two. I would imagine, as the leading Democrat, Fiona Ma will probably be one of the two vote getters, though Decision Desk hasn't officially called that, as it isn't as 100% of a lock as, say, the governor's race, like Xavier Becerra, because he has a much larger share of the vote. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Michael Tubbs, the Democrat candidate. This is a race where he's down at 11.39%, and he's around similar numbers as Chad Bianco, but as the Democrat candidate, he's about 500,000 down on Ma and on Romero. But given the amount of vote that's left out there in the lead that Romero and Ma has, that is technically possible Michael Tubbs could get into the top two. But so that race is important to keep an eye out for as well in lieutenant governor's race in California. But yeah, the main updates on the governor's race and mayor's race right now. Xavier Becerra or Javier Becerra definitely advancing to the general election for the Democrats. And then in the Los Angeles mayor's race, the incumbent Democrat Mayor Karen Bass definitely advanced in the general. Now, second place is the talk of what's going on. Spencer Pratt and Athea Rahman in a very close race for second, and Steve Hilton and Tom Steyer in a very close race for second as well. Let's see. Kiana says, I think 90% chance the Republicans get locked out of the mayor's race and a 45 to 50% chance the Republican gets locked out of the governor's race. And yeah, I think, obviously, I don't know where you're coming up with the numbers, but I think the numbers you came up with there make a lot of sense. I think it definitely looks more bleak for sure for Spencer Pratt than I would say than the governor's race does. As it's just, I know it's a smaller sample size of the vote here, but the state of California overall is a lot more of a Republican state than the city of Los Angeles is a lot more of a Republican city. Just no doubt there. Spencer Pratt is definitely at 29.35%, doing a good job at getting a lot of the Republican vote, but he's also getting a lot of independent vote as well. But a lot of the vote that's remaining is very heavily Democratic, and that's likely going to skew for Karen Bass and Athea Rahman. It's looking more and more likely as time goes on here. We're probably going to see Bass and Rahman in the general election, though again, we won't know for sure until all the votes are in. For the governor's race, though, I really think that 50% number is correct. I think it's a jump ball, really, between Hilton and Steyer because Hilton has the lead right now. We've seen this before, though. Big leads can certainly dissipate over time as more of these late votes come in. We saw it in Arizona in 2020. It got very, very close. Biden did ultimately hang on and win there. That we saw it in Georgia as well. So, and in California, even as these votes have come in over time, things have gotten narrower. So it's going to be very important because these votes that come in, we're going to start getting indicators early on. And I expect, especially on the market side of things, we'll see a lot of movement. If numbers come in a little bit low for Tom Steyer, maybe it goes back up to Hilton at like 75% chance to win. One more vote jump comes in for Steyer. Steyer's back up to like 40%. There's going to be a lot of volatility here, I think, on the market side of things because people are just really, it's unpredictable how this is going to go. I really think the governor's race is essentially a 50-50 toss-up between Hilton or Steyer right now. Whereas in the LA mayor's race, I think it's possible there's enough vote for Pratt to pull it out, but I would say it's more like 75-25 for me that Rahman advances over Pratt. Again, the amount of vote left out there, I can't say 100% for sure is going to be enough for Rahman to flip over Pratt, but I think it's very, very likely we're going to see Rahman jump Pratt once all the votes come in. But again, we're going to be watching very closely. I'm not sure if this will be my only live stream I do on this. I might do another video in a few days going over these numbers as they come in. And we'll see. We'll see if it's a video or a live stream, but we'll update as important developments come in this race, especially if Hilton is jumped by Steyer, or if Pratt is jumped by Rahman, or a call is made in the race, I will definitely do that. In terms of when we're expecting the results, and I know that's the $1 million question. People want to know, when will we get these votes in? When will all the votes be in? I mean, California takes a while on their elections. We know. I know the best example I have and the experience I have with it was the California 45th district with Derek Tran, and the 13th district with Adam Gray back in 2024. And that race was so close because it was under like less than half a percentage point, like 0.1% in both of those races. And what ultimately happened was, and I think it ended up taking like 3 to 4 weeks before all the results came in those districts, and it ended up being very close, literally until the last day. So hopefully this one doesn't take that long, as the margins between Hilton and Steyer, I think, will more likely than not fall under 1 to 2 points, less so than, say, half a percentage point between Hilton and Steyer in the governor's race. So hopefully we get these numbers quicker. Hopefully by the end of like Friday next week, we'll have either a call or a very clear sign. And that sounds crazy. I think a week from now will all the results come in, but you got to think though, Tuesday was election day. Now it's Friday. We're still around 60% of the vote. There is expected to be more vote to come in tonight, but we're probably not going to have a good indicator for sure until next Friday, would be my guess. Hopefully I'm wrong on that, but that would be my guess. On the governor's side, on the mayor's side, it really depends, because we're just waiting on one city versus the entire state. So it's possible it takes less time, though the largest city in the state of California by registered voters, it's a lot of votes to be cast, and a lot of vote by mail, a lot of Democratic vote. I thought election law for California was, if it's postmarked by election day, it has up to a week, I believe, to come in. So by Tuesday, we could start getting some indicators as well for when we may get an idea of when this race is called. I think Pratt versus Rahman overnight has the potential to flip a lot quicker than the governor's race does. I think the governor's one will happen gradually over the next week or so if it does happen. The mayor's one, I think a few vote dumps here and there. This race, that's a 6 point lead for Pratt, could become like a 3 point lead for Pratt. And like the next day, it could end up being like a narrow lead for Rahman. So definitely, in terms of keeping an eye on these races, is very important to watch. I think it's more likely we're going to see the mayor's race flip from Pratt to Rahman first, and then the governor's race over time. I think we'll see either Hilton narrowly hold on and win, or Steyer have a very narrow flip. Let's see. I want to make sure. I don't think there's really too much more I want to add. Just checking the time. We're coming up on about 6 p.m. Eastern time here, and let's do a quick update on VoHub, see if any more results have come in. Looks like 5:03 p.m. is the most recent vote update, so it's been about an hour now. We'll probably, I'm sure, the second I end the live stream, we'll probably get like a update on this race or something and out of one of these counties. But yeah, in terms of what we're expecting today, they did mention earlier Tulare County and Alameda's first dumps around 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. So it's only in a few minutes, 6 p.m. So we can stay on a little bit more just to see if any results come in out of Amador County. Though Amador County at 5:03 p.m., they started estimating some numbers here. So maybe this is all we're going to get for today. So maybe that was the vote dump, but we can still give it a few minutes to see if anything ultimately changes. But for now, again, we're probably going to see small incremental vote dumps out of the state and out of the counties of California over the next like few days and even like week or so. Okay. Let's see here. This waiting for the vote percentage to reach 100% reminds me of the waiting for the 2020 election result. Brian said, yeah, I think it definitely feels very similar. I would say for me, for sure. I think a lot of the election rules here, that vote by mail stuff, I think feels very similar to 2020 as well, as that was like the first big election with like broad vote by mail. So it was definitely taking a long time. I know this isn't really atypical for California, but it's definitely atypical compared to like some of the other primaries we've done, where like Texas and even Illinois counted their votes very quickly, and California's definitely takes a while. So definitely, I would say not the norm. Keanu says, I wonder who Republicans would vote for governor in November. If it's two Dems, would they sit out the election? It'd be a great question. It's a great question. If it ends up being Becerra versus Steyer, it'd really be a great question, because Steyer is certainly, I would argue, the farther left candidate on a lot of environmental policies, I know he wants to go after ICE very heavily, which is definitely a position a lot of Republicans wouldn't support. Then again, Becerra certainly almost like the mainstream Democratic pick in terms of he's the one that most Democratic voters want. It seems, or not most, I would say a large amount of Democratic voters want to be the next governor of California. So it'd be interesting. Maybe they would sit out. Maybe they would just try and figure out which candidate appeals to them more. Which one maybe they feel would do the least amount of quote unquote damage in terms of like these specific policies and such they'd want to support. It's a great question. It's a great question, Kiana, what they would do. I think it's 5 p.m. Cal or 6 p.m. California time. Oh, okay. I thought it said Eastern, but I could be wrong. Uh, did it move over? It might have moved over or not. It might have moved over. Yeah, no, that's a good point. It says 6 p.m. Tulare, 7 p.m. Alameda. So a good point. It could be California time as well. Solo. That's a good point. So if that's the case, if it is, well, because they're using Eastern Standard Time for the update, but if it is California time, it'd be about 9 p.m. on the East Coast for Tulare, and then about 10 p.m. on the East Coast in Alameda, if that is the case. So, okay, so definitely we're not gonna wait around for another like 3 hours. Then, if that's the case, we'll give it probably like another few minutes or so to see if it does come in early, if it is Eastern time. But if it's not, then it might be a few more hours for those numbers come in. But yes, that's everything standing there. Yeah, it's 3 p.m. in California. Yeah, it's 3 p.m. California right now. So if that is the case, we still have a few more, like another 3 hours to go in the state of California there. In terms of the chat poll, I just put it out. If you've seen as well, I've had over 20 votes since these streams started. Will Republicans be locked out of the general election for governor and mayor? Currently, 45% vote yes, 55% vote no. It's going to be interesting because I think definitely going into the looking at the specifics of the poll here, I'm sure it's most think that Spencer Pratt will be locked out of the mayor's race. Steve Hilton versus Tom Steyer is a lot more tricky and more competitive in terms. Will that happen? I bet that's where those who say that won't happen, I bet are banking on Hilton to beat Tom Steyer. Pratt, I think, even though they both have the lead right now, Pratt's chances, despite looking very strong on election night, I think Rahman's just the more the numbers come in, are just slowly increasing her lead and or not lead, but increasing and cutting the deficit down and growing and gaining on Pratt in each vote dump. So I think that's where things ultimately stand on there. Brian said I voted no. Yeah. I think probably Brian, I imagine, voted no too for that reason of Hilton likely staying over Steyer, but then Pratt falling behind Rahman would be my guess. Yeah. Okay, so that's all the gist of it essentially that I have for you for this video. I still want to go a little bit longer to see if any more votes come in because I do believe, like the commenter said, that it's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern time or 3 p.m. California time. So it could end up being 6 p.m. I got that wrong. I'm sorry. 6 p.m. California time, so it could end up being 9 p.m. here if I got that incorrect. So it might be a little bit, but just wait and see. I give it a few minutes to see if something does ultimately change. I'm not sure if it will, but we'll just see if something does ultimately change here. And Brian said because of how it's looking like it'll be Becerra versus Hilton for the general. That's why. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I do still think the likeliest outcome is Becerra versus Hilton for the general election for the governor's race. Steyer has a path to getting there, but I mean, a lot still has to go right with him in these vote dumps. And the ones that have come in, I feel like some have been really good for Steyer. Some have been honestly not too bad for Hilton, even. So it'll be interesting to see as more of the vote comes in how things ultimately go in that way. So yeah, the governor's race is very interesting. It's going to be essentially a jump ball 50-50 until all the votes come in before we have 100% certainty there. Again, the mayor's race, though, I think Pratt versus Rahman. Again, Pratt has the potential to pull it out, but I think it's looking more and more likely that Rahman will take the lead. Though, again, less certain overall when that'll ultimately happen. If there's any final comments or questions you want to make before I end the stream, you can do it all here. I've been going for a little bit over an hour now. I don't have the like 7 hours or 6 hours that I did for the election night stream to keep going today. So I'll probably be wrapping it a little bit early in a few minutes. But if you do have any comments or questions you want to get out in the final few minutes here, obviously feel free to leave them all in the chat. I do have it up on another screen. So I keep looking right as I have another screen to the right here that I'm looking at the chat for. So if you have any comments or questions or anything, you can leave them here. Otherwise, just give it a few minutes and then I'll probably end the stream in just a little bit. Yeah, just do a final few checking of Vote Hub. 5:03 p.m. still the last update, so it's been about an hour since that. We talked about it throughout the video a little bit as well. In terms of the general election, how things could unfold, the governor's race, I think, will be similar to the presidential race of 2024, about a 20-point Democratic win. If it's Hilton versus Becerra, the 2022 governor's race was 18.4% for Newsom in 2022. 2018 was a 24-point win for Newsom over the Republican in 2018. So I think somewhere between that like 18 to 24 point, it's kind of a widespread, but somewhere in that safe Democratic margin could be how it goes. In terms of one election of what we could see for Becerra versus Steyer, if that were to happen, California, I believe, semi recently, it may have been the Kamala Harris race. I think it might have been in 2018, or no, it may have been, was it Padilla or Harris? No, it was the Dianne Feinstein race. We saw this one where Feinstein ended up beating the Democratic candidate Leon by 8.3% in this race. I think we did see in 2016 the Kamala Harris one as well. May have been something similar. Yeah, Kamala Harris ended up winning here by 23.2%. So this is an example of a Democratic candidate versus another Democratic candidate. But Harris won by a safe margin, sort of akin to what the margin of victory would be for like a governor's race. But then in 2018, for Feinstein versus Leon, we saw a race that was a lot more competitive. It was an 8.3% race, a likely Democratic win for Feinstein over Leon. I think for Becerra versus Steyer, obviously very early to say as we don't know if Steyer will advance to the general yet, but if it were to happen, I think we'd see more of an election like this one, where it'd be like an 8 to 10 point win for Becerra versus Steyer, because I think there are certainly a lot of voters in the general election that would come out to vote for Tom Steyer, probably view him as the more farther left Democratic candidate, which we've seen Democrats in 2025 and 2026. The farther left Democrats have done very well. Things are on Mamdani in New York City is one example. So I think there will be a good amount of momentum behind Steyer in the race, but I do think Javier Becerra as the sort of like leading mainstream Democratic candidate in California governor's race right now. He's finishing in first place in the primary. I think we see a race similar to this one of like an 8-point win for Becerra over Steyer. In terms of how the map looked overall, it's weird not seeing any red, obviously, in a two Democratic race, but this is how it all looked, where you see a lot of the red, or not, I guess the typically red areas on the eastern coast of California that would normally vote Republican seem to have come in for Kevin De Leon in this race. And then you see a lot of the typically more stronger Democratic areas. Dianne Feinstein won these areas. And Javier Becerra is from Sacramento, and Tom Steyer is from San Francisco. So it may be kind of the inverse of this. You may see Becerra do very well in a lot of strong Hispanic areas. Like you may see him do very well in Sacramento and Los Angeles, maybe in Orange County and San Diego, and then maybe some of these Republican areas as well. But then you may see Tom Steyer do very well in San Francisco and the Bay Area. We could see even on the election results now where San Francisco is going. I'm going to have to zoom in to get it. But Tom Steyer is winning in San Francisco, even though he's currently losing in Alameda. He's running very strongly here in second place. He's running pretty strong in Santa Clara and Contra Costa as well. It may be a situation where Steyer does better in the Bay Area against Becerra. And then these Republican areas, it'll be interesting here because they vote for Becerra, who's like a typical Democratic candidate. For instance, a county like Lassen County that voted for Chad Bianco by 44 points, and then Hilton at 32. Becerra only got 8.73. What do? Do they go for Becerra? Do they go for Tom Steyer? You could look at a county like Alpine County. It's very small, not typically a very Democratic county, but environmentalism and protecting the nature and nature life there is very important. And Tom Steyer was able to lead here and win here, getting 28% of the vote. So does Tom Steyer do well in this point of the state, given a lot of his policies on protecting the environment and nature? That could actually be something that maybe in these more Republican areas, Steyer in that election environment would be able to potentially do here. Let's see. A few more comments here. If I lived in California in 2016, Brian said I was eligible and registered to vote back then, I'd vote for Sanchez. I don't know who I would vote for if I voted for Feinstein versus the De Leon race. If I were to choose who to vote for. Gotcha. Yeah, so it's interesting because in terms of a general election standpoint, honestly, kind of a selfishly one. If you're looking for a more competitive race, without a doubt, the Becerra versus Steyer general election is a lot more competitive than Becerra versus Hilton, just because California is so heavily Democratic that it'll likely be like a 18, as I mentioned, 18 to 24 point win for Becerra over Hilton. But Becerra versus Steyer has the potential to be a lot more competitive. So, from a margin of victory standpoint, Becerra versus Steyer is the more competitive matchup. For Los Angeles Mayor, don't really have too much track record to go off here other than the race from 2022 for the Los Angeles Mayor's race of Karen Vass versus Rich Caruso, which I think I may still have that pulled up. I may not. Let me pull it up here and pull up the results just to show you how that went. Where initially on the first round, which took place on June 7th, so what we just went through in this race with Karen Bass, Spencer Pratt, and Athea Rahman, what ended up happening was Karen Bass got 43.1%, Rich Caruso got 35.99%. Kevin De Leon, that same candidate that ran for Senate, ended up getting 7.79% of the vote, and then Gina Viola got 6.86%. So in this one, the top two candidates, Bass and Caruso, got a lot more of the share of the vote. And then the third place candidate, where Nathia Rahman's getting like 23% of the vote right now, Leon was down at around a little bit under 8%. So there wasn't that strong emerging third place candidate like Rahman is in this race. It's also interesting as Rick Caruso has a very interesting political background where I believe he was a Republican candidate that became a independent candidate that also became a Democrat. I believe it is. Oh yeah, he was a Republican before 2011, and from 2016 to 2019 he was a Republican, and then from 2011 to 2016 he said he was an independent, and then from 2019 to 2022 he was still an independent in that. And then when he ran for mayor, he was a registered Democrat from 2022 to present. So in terms of whether it's policy or whether it's electoral situation of running in Los Angeles, Caruso was an interesting candidate in the fact that he could get a lot of Republican independents and even some Democratic votes, and he got up to 36% of the vote in the primary, which based on the current primary, 36% would be enough for a very narrow lead in the race. Back then, Bass obviously was a lot more popular than she is now. She got around that 43%. So we head to the general election of Bass versus Caruso, like we're going to see of either Bass versus Pratt or Bass versus Rahman. And it was a very close race as well, where things ultimately ended up. Bass gets 54.83% of the vote. Caruso gets 45.17, also around a 9 point win. Now, Los Angeles, obviously, it's a lot more, I would say, broken down. I don't know this area as well as, say, the state of California does and all the counties in California. But you look at the vote here, the green is Karen Bass, the orange is Caruso, and you see how this area votes down or split out here. It's important because in a race of Karen Bass versus Spencer Pratt, we don't know how it'll go for say, but we have a pretty good idea that Karen Bass would probably beat Spencer Pratt by a pretty considerable amount. And we have, I do believe, some early polling for a runoff. The Karen Bass versus Spencer Pratt poll from UC Berkeley in the Los Angeles Times from May 19th to the 24th, about 1,900 registered voters. Bass had 47% of the vote. Pratt only had 22%, with 12% saying they wouldn't vote for either of them and 12% undecided. So it's a very significant amount here. Already Bass nearly breaking 50% of the vote. Pratt only down at 22%, but still 12% undecided, which is significant because, again, Pratt currently right now is getting about 29.35% of the vote. So in the runoff poll, Pratt starting out in the general election only getting about 22%, while Bass starts out at 47, already about a 25% lead in that race. It's very clear Bass versus Pratt. Yes, Pratt has a lot of momentum to maybe get in the top two, but Bass would win that race. For Bass versus Rahman, it's a lot more undecided race here. Same pollsters, same statistics and sample size, same margin of error. Nathia Rahman starts at the 32%. Only 28% support Karen Bass versus the 47% versus Spencer Pratt. So whether it's Pratt being a Republican or his background of being the reality TV star, a lot more voters would say If it's Bass versus Pratt, they're like, no, we're not taking the chance on Pratt. Even if we don't like Karen Bass and how she's been as mayor, we'd rather take the chance on what we know than take the chance on what we don't know in Spencer Pratt. Whereas Bass versus Rahman, there's a lot more of that appetite to potentially take a chance on another candidate. Though it's not necessarily, it seems, out of popularity, as Bass is at 28, Rahman's at 32, so Rahman outperforms Pratt by about 10 points, but 25% of voters said they'd rather support neither candidate. That's a very large chunk. That's up over double from the Pratt versus Bass race. So it would seem here that for Bass versus Pratt, roughly about 13% of respondents would say, instead of saying they don't want to support either candidate, they just say, okay, we'll support Karen Bass because we don't really want to risk Spencer Pratt being mayor. But for this one, roughly 13% more said, I'd rather just not support either one of them, with another 10% going to Nathia Rahman and a lot of Bass's support essentially almost being cut in half, but still 15% undecided. So from a general election standpoint, again, just strictly talking about margin of victory, Karen Bass versus Nathia Rahman seems to make up the most competitive general election. Karen Bass versus Spencer Pratt, even though Bass definitely seems to have a lot of unpopularity issues, she's leading over Pratt over 20 points, about 25 points, would likely be a safe Democratic win. But if it's Rahman versus Bass, then you're looking at the 2022 mayoral's race of about a 9-point win for Bass versus Caruso and saying, okay, in terms of margin of victory, the race may start at 9 points and it may even go closer from there once we get more information on this race. So it's very interesting to see how this unfolds because obviously, from an election standpoint, you're talking about a competitive race versus a non-competitive race. You're talking about a nonpartisan candidate, quote unquote, that is a Democrat in Karen Bass versus a nonpartisan candidate, quote unquote, that's a Republican in Spencer Pratt. And then you have also Nathia Rahman, a nonpartisan Democratic candidate who is, I would argue, the furthest left Democrat in this race. So, from a policy standpoint, the direction Los Angeles moves from being a far left Democratic mayor, a Democratic mayor, or a Republican mayor, has important implications for the city, of course, as well, but also from an election standpoint. Because whether we talk about this race or not in the general election really comes down to, will it be competitive or not? Bass versus Pratt doesn't really look like it. Bass versus Rahman looks like it definitely could be. So I just want to give my quick sense on that one because I think that's important conversation as we may end up with two Democrats in both the governor and mayor's race. Again, it's an if. We don't know for sure if we'll see two Democrats running in mayor or governor until all the results come in and we get those numbers for sure. But based on the results of the last few days, we're definitely trending towards Rahman versus Bass in the mayor's race in Los Angeles. But again, we'll have to wait and see until all the results come in. I do like how Wikipedia is very updated too on the numbers that have come in. They have 64% on other results in. Decision Desk, I believe, has 69%. So still some more vote to go out of Los Angeles, but very important to see ultimately as these results come in, how things change in this race. And then the governor's race as well out of California, we're waiting for these results to come in as well. It's really interesting because we're in sort of like a time, I don't know how best to describe it, maybe like no man's land, or we're just kind of stuck waiting until we know for sure how these results will come in and the rest of the vote will come in because still a lot of the vote to go in the governor and mayor's race. But I wanted to give you an update on where things are currently at. Let's see here. I think I got so I got Brian's comment about the Feinstein versus De Leon race. Let's see. I'd imagine Harris was viewed as unfavorable back in 2016. Brian said, I'm not so sure because she was was she the attorney general at the time of California? So she had the pedigree of being the state's attorney general. I'm sure she definitely had her share of supporters and definitely people that were opposed to her being senators. So I'm sure that's why she still won by 20 points, but it wasn't like 100%. So honestly, Brian, I'm not sure, but could be for sure. Sintad says Jimmy Carter said all the foreign elections he witnessed were fraudulent, mail-in ballots, great analysis in the elections. Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Brian says Rahman leading Bass in the top poll, and are committing treason right in front of our very eyes, said Stitch K1H. So let's see. It's about been 6:18 p.m. So no results. I don't believe any more results have come in. So kind of like the earlier commenter said, it may be a situation of the results may be coming in around 6 p.m. California time, which would be 9 p.m. here for Tulare, and then 10 p.m. Eastern time in Alameda County. So I've covered where things currently are. If more things change over the next few days, I'll either do a video or a live stream to update you as they come in. But for now, that's pretty much it. I don't really have too much more to add. I hope you've enjoyed this live stream. Again, this isn't definitely atypical. Usually I only do election night live streams, but technically election night continues with this one. So I want to do an update where things currently are right now. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. And yeah, if you want to see more of these, obviously, leave in the comment section below saying you want to see more. And if you really enjoyed it, you can hit like and hit subscribe as well. So you see when I post new videos, which I usually do. I post one new video every day and a bunch of shorts every day as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, please remember to hit like and subscribe if you did. And I hope to see you in a future video.